Okay, as with any other Unity project, I'm kind of starting with a blank slate. This is going to be kind of a new game, so I don't have any of the packages that I need. And one of the first things I'm going to do is I need to get a character in the level. So today we're going to use a little bit of a different character. We've used a first-person controller. We've also used a ball that we've made ourselves. So let's use one of the existing Unity third-person characters and the camera associated with it. So I'm going to import in the characters package, which includes a guy named Ethan. I don't know why he's called Ethan. He's like a new third-person prefab that they included with Unity 5. He has a little bit more fidelity in his animation. He's a little bit more realistic as far as his movement is concerned compared to the third-person character that's in Unity 4. Cool. All right, so I'm going to create a place for Ethan to live. Here's my plane, as usual. Scale this guy up. So I'm going to grab Ethan and put him into the level. So this is all in the lab, by the way, so you guys can just watch for now. So there he is. I'm going to put the camera right here. Oops. Let's play. Let's just see what this looks like. So there's Ethan. He kind of leans and stuff, and he has like transition animations. He still moves camera relative. I kind of want the camera to follow him, so there's a couple ways we can do this. I'm going to show you one way. This is not the greatest way. I could just stick the camera on him. That's kind of like the first thing that I would like try normally. So I just go here and I would like move the camera here and be like, oh, maybe this is a good spot for the camera. Problem is, it kind of makes the camera look all weird because Ethan, when he spins, kind of makes you dizzy because like the camera, the whole world kind of spins too. So there's actually a better way to do this. I'm gonna put some geo in the level just to get some perspective. Just gonna put a cube there. So there's also another package you can import, which is the cameras package. This thing kind of comes with some very standard cameras, and cameras are something that's everyone can do them differently. Like there's so many different ways to implement a camera, but the ways that they include here are pretty handy. I'm going to delete the actual existing main camera because I don't need it. And go under cameras and go to prefabs, and there's a couple of prefabs here. I don't know if you guys can see what they are. Let me just go down here and list. There's a multi-purpose camera rig, free look camera rig, handheld, CCTV. The multi-purpose one is the one we're going to use today. It basically is a way to have it follow a character and follow him smoothly. And what's nice is that I can actually have it just, I can just drag the third-person controller here as the target, and I hit play, and the camera kind of automatically starts doing what I want it to. So now notice how the camera kind of follows him lazily. It kind of is a tracking camera, and it eventually will turn if I run far enough away to get behind him. It's kind of nice. If I want the camera to move closer, all I have to do is click on the camera itself and just kind of shove it forward. I'd also like to just to reset this. I want this to be right on top of Ethan because I want it to be right on top, but I don't want to parent it to him because if you parent it to him, it looks like this and looks awful. Does this thing again, right? It looks really terrible. I'm only parenting it to him so I can reset the position. And then now I can move the camera. Let's say I want to do like a little bit closer. I see the little camera preview over there. I can get a little better idea of where the camera is going to be. Unity's super laggy for me. So bear with me. So I can put it like over the shoulder here. And this camera is just nice because it's kind of just an all-purpose camera, hence why it's called multi-purpose. You can kind of use it in any game that you want, and it'll behave this way. And it kind of just reacts in a way that's I think it's pretty good. Like this is kind of like a Zelda camera, right? And you can adjust properties like how fast it moves. So like this camera has properties over here for how fast it turns and how fast it moves, as well as how much it follows. So I can have it move faster and turn faster if I want it to be a little bit snappier for when Ethan moves. So now it's a little harder for him to get out of view. And so that's something that I think will help us here, because we're going to make a door that he can run into and interact with. Okay, so now that we have our scene, I'm also going to import in the prototyping package because that has a bunch of objects in it that I can use to make the doors. And the first thing I want to do is just make a very simple door that moves up when I touch it. And eventually you can get to the point where you have to hit a button to interact with the door to open it. But for now, we're just going to keep it super simple and just focus on the important aspects, which are the key and the global variables part. So let's make a couple of walls here. Just a wall that's big enough so that he can't jump over it. It's really laggy. All right. And then this thing is going to act as my door. Just scale it up. And then we'll just stick a material on it. I'm going to use one of the pre-existing ones from Unity. Okay, so there's our door. We can make this thing actually a wall, a room if we want to. I'll try. It's taking forever to actually scale. Okay. Because what we're going to eventually do is put a key in here. All right. It's going to have to be good enough. You guys are going to have to do better than this. So I can play. Just to confirm, can't go through there, can't jump over there, can't jump over there either. Okay. And if you want, the camera also has the ability to prevent you from clipping into walls if you want. Or it tries to anyway. All right, so this is going to be our door. It's just a yellow cube for now. It can kind of be an actual door if you want, like any kind of door. You can have it move however you want to. So I'm just going to show you the simplest way, which is to have it move up. It's kind of like any other object that we have. First of all, I'm going to rename this thing. So I want to talk a little bit about naming conventions too. Up to this point, I've been kind of pretty lax on whatever things are named. But one of the things they don't really teach you that often, and it's super important to realize, is how you name things is actually very important in the industry, especially assets when you import them, how you name them, as well as how you name things in the game. And it seems kind of weird, like it's not, how important could it actually be? Well, it's not actually important at all at first. Like at first it's like, oh, I know what these objects are. Like it's like I don't need to name this texture that I imported anything really crazy special. I could just name it like pink smooth or navy grid or whatever these things are. At first it seems okay. Then a couple of weeks pass by and it starts to get a little weird because now you have everyone importing. Imagine you're on a team like Overwatch where we have 80 people right now, and like about 30 to 40 of them are artists and they're all importing textures. And everyone kind of imports and names whatever they think the texture should be, which is fine. Everyone has their own flavor of what they want to call it. But now you have maybe 1,000 textures. Quickly that boils into 10,000 textures and 20,000 models, as well as like 10,000 materials and 30,000 sounds. Have you guys ever seen how many textures is actually like 10,000 textures in a folder? It's nearly impossible to distinguish what a texture is from any other file if they're all named like this. Like if you looked at this and you didn't know that it was a material, you might assume that these things were like models, or they might even just be like, who knows, maybe they're like a material or a texture, or maybe they're an emitter. I don't know. Someone could have named it. Maybe you didn't actually name it correctly, which is why it's actually super important to establish those conventions and also follow whoever your lead is that tells you what those conventions are. Is actually like, it seems insignificant, but it's so easy to screw up and you'll get dinged on it constantly if you don't follow it. So here's the thing. Like, I have a very simple naming convention for Unity objects, which is anything that's like triggerable, I put GO underscore in front of it, which stands for game object, so that when I'm looking here in the level, I can see which of these things is actually a game object. I can see that this thing is actually a door because it's not just a regular mesh. This is a plane, it doesn't do anything special, but this actually is a game object, which is something that I'm going to script. Also, any materials that I would import, I would actually probably rename these things to be like M underscore for material, or textures can be T underscore. Establish your kind of own naming convention for your own assets, but keep in mind that every single company has their own naming convention. Every single one does. Even Unreal does. And when you look at Unreal assets and you see how they have their standard assets, a lot of them are named in this way, like P underscore for particle system or M underscore for material. They try to keep that convention in there just so that as you get more than like 2 weeks into developing this game, that you don't like start getting really confused about which assets are what. And those are the kind of little things that can cost you a lot of time. If you're looking for a specific texture and you're looking through folders and you don't know, like maybe one of these things is actually a texture, you can't tell because they don't have any prefix on them, well, consider adding a prefix to your objects. So that's why I named this thing GO underscore door, to stand for game object. And I'm going to start doing that for all my prefabs as well as all of the Playmaker states that I have too, just so I can actually tell them apart from one another. Kind of a silly, it's kind of the boring stuff, figuring out how to name things correctly, but it's actually one of the hardest things to do correctly. And it's something that they don't teach you how important it is, because like your first day on a job, you're going to get there, you're going to import a texture, and they're going to be like, you didn't name that texture correctly. You didn't follow the naming conventions. We have very strict naming conventions. Our naming conventions for our animations are insane. Like the amount of things that you have to actually put prefixes on the animations for, like just for an example, like we have Tracer, right? And so Tracer, I'm taking a little bit of a tangent here because this is, I think, important. Tracer has, let's say she has a reload animation, right? So this might be something like the animation itself. Well, the naming convention is more like anim underscore. Then is it a full body animation or is it an additive animation? Okay. Is this an upper body animation, a 1P animation, or a 3P animation? Okay. Is this her animation for her weapon or is it for her body, right? And now I have a little bit more information about what it's doing. Maybe is it, also there's one more thing, what direction is the reload? We have an 8-directional reload animation system, so is it front forward? Is it forward? Is it right? We actually have like, it's like a compass axis, so like we have like forward right, forward back, forward left, okay? Some other bits of information for the animation. We have full body, additive, whether or not it is upper body or not too in some cases. So sometimes we'll have it's a full body animation, but it's actually limited to the waist up. So some of our reload animations are waist up only animations, so it might be like upper body. And so the relevant pieces of information is like just here. But all the rest of this, these are commonly shared. So let's say I have like a Reaper animation reload. Right? Seems pretty straightforward. But what if I have like tracer animation for jumping, right? And it is an additive animation, it's a full body, it's a 3P, and then it's jump forward. Okay, so what's nice is that this thing actually tells me also that I can distinguish different parts of it just by looking at the file name. Like this can be a weapon, right? This is our naming convention that we follow for our animations, and there's a lot of prefix data in front of it, but it's actually super important because if you ever try to plug in a full body animation into something that's expecting an additive animation, it'll like completely screw up Tracer's model in game. You guys know the difference between a full body? Did you guys learn that in animation class at all? Full body and additive animations? It's kind of a newer thing. They started doing it in Drake's Uncharted, back in the original Drake's Uncharted, but we've been using it pretty much ever since, and that was like 7 years ago. The difference between a full body and an additive is that you think about full body as like your traditional animation, like it's a run, it's a jump, it's like my shooting, it's my reloads. Those are always played. They kind of manipulate all the bones. They take over how the bones are moving, and they say, hey, this bone should be here right now. Cool. An additive animation is a way to take a full body animation and you layer in more movement on top of it. So, for instance, Bastion's actually a great example. I don't know if you guys have seen. I'm going to bring it up because might as well.
Kind of like if you're running and then you hit like B to like punch, so he punches while he's running.
Kind of like that. That's an example of an additive animation which plays an animation on top of his run. A more subtle example is like Bastion 2, where he has a full body idle where he's moving and shooting. But if you can tell, let's see. So see how he's kind of like jiggling, and his mouth is going ba 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 ba. Like it actually moves up and down a little bit. See, it's like an engine is moving. So that behavior of like him moving up and down is actually just an additive idle that's played on top of his regular idle. So if we remove that additive, he would just be like stationary. He wouldn't actually be moving at all. He'd have his pose, but the actual movement up and down is basically a little bit of animation data that says, hey, these bones, add this amount of movement on top of these bones. Just on his root, it knows his feet don't move, but his like legs do. That's an example of an additive. We have additive idles for like breathing. Breathing is a good example of where you can use an additive animation. So you have an idle, right? And you don't want to necessarily put the breathe animation into the idle because maybe you want to use that breathe animation for everything, right? The nice part about an additive is that you can take that breathe additive animation and add it to every single animation you have, right? So you animate one breathe, and then you put it on his idle, the runs, his attacks. Even while he's shooting, he's doing this animation. So notice while he shoots, he actually is still jiggling up and down. He has his firing animation, which is also another additive. That firing animation is an additive animation on top of his idle, right? So all those things, we have a ton of animations. We have a lot of animators on our team, but and they're all really, really very good. But like we have naming conventions like this to try to help identify. We have hundreds of animations for each character, probably more than that for some. But this is how we keep everything sane. So if we had just named it like Tracer Reload, I don't know whether that's for her weapon or for her body, or if that's the additive version of her reload or the full body version of the reload. We have different versions as well. Sometimes we'll play a full body version if she's like standing still or if she's like in first person, right? A first person, we don't really have an additive for that. That's just something to keep in mind. I hope that wasn't too crazy, but that's why I'm going to start using these prefixes because it's just my habit. So I'm going to name this thing door. All right, so now I'm going to add. Going back here, any questions on that stuff? You guys should ask, if you take an animation class, you should ask about additive animations, because that's like super common now. I mean, every game is like using them now. And Unreal supports it too, so. It's also, they use it in Uncharted for like, when you land after jumps, they have like a dozen different jump additives, or jump land additives, but only one full body jump land. Right? And the additive animations kind of make him like stagger in different ways. So they just randomly play a random jump stagger, and they only have to do the work of animating the full jump land once. And additive animations are way faster to create. It's like way quicker. You only have to do a little bit more work to get the additive animation to work. All right. So I'm going to add a cube. I'm going to call it trigger. And in case of children, I don't really mind not putting a prefix here just because I know that when I look at it like this, it's basically a game object, and that's the trigger for it. Just going to scale up this trigger here, turn off the mesh renderer. So here's my trigger. Just has to be big enough to like make it so that I have to walk up to the door, like that. And then make sure that his trigger is on. And then we're going to add an FSM. Oh, I never imported Playmaker. That would be useful.
Your trigger is not huge.
Yeah, I probably screwed up because Unity is running really slow. Let us import in Playmaker. The nice part about additives too is that you can it adds a lot of variation to an animation, whereas in the past you would literally have to fully author animations for all the different variations of behavior. But now you can make like a dozen additive animations and your character looks more kind of realistic or like behaves more believably because there's a little bit of variance in how they react. So you can author those really quickly, and it's just, you basically take the base animation and you author an animation off of that. You take a base pose. You always, so the way the additive animations work is that you have this pose that is used for animating the full body as well as the additive, and you just move the additive however you want to with like, you would actually load in the full body animation and then animate the additive on top of the full body animation, and then you export it and it just exports a tiny little animation that's only additive. All right, so this thing is going to be like that, maybe like that. Okay, so now I'm going to add in an FSM, Playmaker FSM. This one's going to be the trigger FSM, so I'm going to name it here. It's going to be like any other trigger that you've done. Also some shortcuts. You can control click, I kind of told you that, to add states. It's much faster. I'm going to first name this first state, like waiting for player. That's what it's doing. And the second state's going to be open door. And you guys have all done this already at least once. And I'm going to create a new event called player entered trigger. And here I'm going to add a new action. You can hit, if you're ever here and you want to open up the action browser, you can hit tilde, which is the top left key, and it'll bring up this action browser. You can just start typing right away for what you want. So a trigger, make sure to send the player enter trigger event. And I can add that as a transition here. Cool. Let's just test that real quick. Keep this on the view. So you see the green box change. It's always good to at least test that this thing is moving. Cool. Okay, so it's already an open door. And then all we have to do is basically do an iTween. If you want the door to actually just rotate, you can have an iTween rotate instead, but I'm just going to have it do a rotate, an iTween move by. I have it move up like 5 units over 2 seconds, and then ease type, ease in cubic today. Okay. Let's just see the door move up. Ah, do you see the trigger moved up that time? It's because when I go here, the other part to actually doing the iTween is to specify who you're moving. So I'm going to pick specify game object and just drag the door in here. Cool. So Ethan has this weird behavior where he ducks if something is too close to his head. You can turn that off if you want. You can click on the door itself, and you can change this layer to be ignore raycast. And you can change all children as well. He does this like check to see if something is above him before he moves, and if something's above him, then he'll duck. Cool. So now I'm in the room. Nice. All right, so before we jump into getting the actual key working, I kind of want you guys to get caught up. So I want you to get something similar where there's a character running around with a door that moves up when you touch it. So this is lab number 1. Spend some time, get it working, and then if you want to jump ahead, you can. Otherwise, I just want to see that everyone's caught up on the same page.